Missouri wins a game on the basketball court, but loses out on a big-time recruit. Plus, good news, the Missouri Tigers have won another Super Bowl. What am I talking about? I'll explain coming up on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And I do want to talk about last night's win over SIU Edwardsville, of course, but I do want to lead off the program here by talking about Jayden Quaintance. Of course, I've talked a ton about Quaintance, and because simply put, he's a really, really high-level prospect. You just don't see too many guys at 16 years old, 6'10", thereabouts, with his size, say 250 pounds or so, just guessing off the top of my head from looking there. But he just moves like a much smaller man for his size. Let's put it that way. That's the thing that really stands out in terms of Quaintance. So unfortunately, you may have heard that Quaintance committed to the University of Kentucky earlier today on this Tuesday, November 14th. And it's a bummer because obviously Missouri was really, really close by all accounts to getting Quaintance. And that's happened a few times to Dennis Gates and company, where they've been in on some really good players and just got that silver medal. But unfortunately, you don't get any silver medals in recruiting. You get bupkis. But you know what? I'm choosing to look at this as being a glass half full here, because anytime you can get in on a top 10 type prospect like Quaintance, come down to the wire with a classic blue blood a program like Kentucky and one of the great recruiters of this generation in John Calipari, well, I'd say that recruiting is going incredibly well. And obviously it is going incredibly well for Missouri, signing T.O. Barrett, Honor Boateng, among Marcus Allen, Peyton Marshall as well, the big man, the center, a really interesting prospect. And by the way, just a really interesting statement from Coach Gates after Marshall and the rest of that class I just ran down for you inked their national letters of intent officially to join the Missouri Tigers. He said Peyton is the best passer in the 2024 class, regardless of position in school. His court vision and his ability to quarterback the team for his size is unmatched. And Marshall is a guy who's maybe just under 7 feet tall, around 300 pounds, something like that, and a guy who is an absolute load on the block with great touch, great body control, post moves that are well advanced beyond most people his age, and in particular for this type of basketball, this era of basketball where back to the basket play on the block has really been devalued over the years. So just to see that Marshall, according to Coach Gates, is the best passer in the class as well, my goodness, that's something that definitely shows up on film. And he's a really good passer for sure, but that's quite a statement from Coach Gates. It really is. So Marshall and this whole class is something that Missouri fans should still be incredibly excited to see. Obviously, getting Jayden Quaintance would have been incredible, but from all accounts, that's probably going to wrap it up for the high school portion of this recruiting class. Look for Missouri to fill whatever needs they feel they have through the transfer portal this offseason. Now, Eli Drinkwitz talked to the media just about an hour ago as I report this here, and he told us probably the biggest news so far in this not off week, in this period here between games, is that Tyron Hopper is going to be questionable for the ball game. He didn't play very much in that Tennessee game, left after about, I think, 14 snaps or so, and did not return. Drinkwitz said that fortunately the x-rays on Hopper's ankle were clean, no breaks, but his ankle was, quote, pretty swollen yesterday, and we're going to treat the mess out of it today. In other words, he's just going to be getting a lot of treatment, spending a ton of time with the medical staff. But you know what? At this point of the season, I don't know that we need to rush Tyron Hopper into the lineup. But obviously he's a guy who's probably going to be finishing up his Mizzou career here pretty soon, so he's probably going to want to play. Again, tough balance there. Obviously not a decision I'm going to be weighing in on whatsoever. Just saying that at this point, it seemed like actually the Missouri linebackers, Chuck Hicks and Tristan Newsom, seemed to hold up just fine against Tennessee. So you would think we'd be okay against Florida. Obviously, Hopper's going to want to play against his former ball club. I'm sure of that, though. But at the same time, I should also point out that Chad Bailey, another linebacker from Missouri, is out for the season. That news came out last week. I just don't believe that I ever got to it and mentioned it here on this program. So unfortunately for Chad Bailey, I think his Missouri career is likely over here. And that is too bad, because Bailey definitely has been a solid player for the Tigers. Just had a lot of injury troubles throughout his career. But obviously best of luck to Chad the rest of this season and the rest of his life here going forward post-football. Speaking of people who are post their Missouri football career, Valen Erickson, who was a 4-star offensive lineman by a lot of outlets coming out of high school, sounded like he had a decent chance to maybe play a little bit this season. Hasn't happened yet, and it turns out he's going to enter the transfer portal, which is obviously disappointing news if you're a Missouri fan, but, nothing to really take from it one way or the other. You never know why kids might be transferring. Perhaps he's a little homesick. You never know with these type of things. So, again, nothing bad to say here, just definitely a notable thing there, and a disappointing thing if you're a Missouri fan. But again, people are going to transfer in, they're going to transfer out. This is just part of the deal. But another thing I found quite humorous, by the way, I saw some Tennessee fans coping online with a big loss to Missouri this past week. Well, after a lot of Kansas State fans in week 3 were saying that Missouri basically had won their Super Bowl for the season, sort of trying to downgrade Missouri's accomplishment in week 3, by the way, by saying, well, I guess they tried really hard. Good for them. I don't know. It's sort of a strange insult, I guess, when you accuse people of, I guess, trying too hard or wanting the game too much, being too motivated. I don't know, but apparently you can win more than one Super Bowl in one season, because the Tigers got the Super Bowl treatment from some volunteer fans I saw online too. Again, I'm not saying this is the larger sort of commentariat by the conventional wisdom down in Knoxville by any stretch of the imagination. I just always find it was their Super Bowl, that sort of excuse making, to be rather weak and pathetic in general. And also, I do want to talk some more basketball coming up on the program, including why I think this version of Shaun East feels very, very real. But you know what? First, let's talk about a real topic, which is Jase Medical. And did you know that the Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use? And also, quite honestly, even for non-emergency use, which is what I found myself using it for recently. An antibiotic, had the perfect one, according to my beautiful registered nurse wife, to treat my ear infection. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, even 40-year-old men can still get the occasional ear infection. But if you have an even bigger issue than that, don't get caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase Medical worked for me, and I'm quite certain it's going to work for you as well. So if you or someone you love Would love to get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication? Go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. And remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase at jacemedical.com. Now, last year's version of Shaun East was a very good player for Missouri, in my opinion, but his 22% three-point percentage last year just wasn't going to cut it for a guy who was going to play starters minutes. Now, the good news is, fortunately, Shaun East has always been an excellent free throw shooter throughout his college career, which often portends the ability to hit shots from almost anywhere, not just the ability at least to stretch out that range to the three-point line. Let's put it that way. And we also know that Shaun East has a great first step, a nice handle, again, good foul shooter when he gets to that line and can score in the paint. But actually, when you go back a couple seasons, his previous Division I stops at Bradley and UMass, actually, well, East was not a great three-point shooter, but he was quite a bit better than 22%, 32% his freshman year, and then nearly 35% his sophomore season at Bradley. So obviously there is a little bit more. He's shown more in the past than he did last year as a shooter with the Tigers. And obviously Dennis Gates has shown the ability with his staff to improve a guy's three-point shooting pretty dramatically. Kobe Brown was the guy last year who improved the most dramatically for sure, but even Demoy Hodge had a big uptick in his three-point shooting last season. So Shaun East so far, obviously he's not going to hit 60% of his three-pointers all season, but just the fact that so far he's hit 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, and 2 out of 3 in these 3 games, that shot and the confidence with which he's putting them up, including off the dribble, on step backs, to me, this is all a good sign moving forward, and that actually this isn't just a hot streak by Shaun East. I think this is more close to what he is. I think we'll see East shoot 35 to maybe 40%, as high as that as a three-point shooter this season. And if he does that, man, he is an all-SEC caliber player. Definitely first couple 3 teams at the very least. Now, as for the rest of the Missouri basketball team's offense, I think so far we look pretty darn good, and mostly like we did last season when we're free-flowing, when the ball is moving quickly, when we've got the ball out after a turnover or a missed shot, something like that. Well, Missouri looks pretty darn good. But when the defense is able to get set, you know, that's when, in the half court, that's when things slow down for Missouri pretty considerably so far, and I'm not totally sure what we are just yet. Now, Noah Carter early in the basketball game yesterday was definitely knocking down three-pointers as the pick-and-pop big man. You know, Shaun East obviously taking guys off the dribble into the paint. Other than that, though, what is Missouri's real action that you're confident in so far? I'm not saying that they're not going to find that. I just think that this team is very much discovering who it is at this point, especially when you've got, you know, Connor Vanover has not seen the floor yet. He's going to play his first game here Thursday night at Minnesota. It sounds like John Tunjay obviously is a little bit rusty, it would seem, coming back from injury. We see that all the time. Guys, their first game or 2 back from injury just don't quite have the feel just yet. I think we'll see much better action from him. One thing I've been surprised about is that we haven't seen more from Trent Pierce so far. A lot of hype about him in the preseason. I'm not saying he had to start or lead the team in scoring or anything like that. I've just been a little bit surprised that he hasn't seen a little bit more action yet. If he's as good of a scorer as he's been hyped up to be, I like what I saw out of him defensively, just in terms of movement, and he's a little bit thicker than I would have expected at this point. I was expecting him to be, you know, absolutely rail thin, and certainly he has plenty of time and frame to put on muscle, but I just think that Pierce is going to hold up defensively better than I thought. At least those are my first instincts, just watching him play very little basketball so far. Also thought it was noteworthy that Jesus Carolero Martin, Caleb Brown, Mabor Majak, none of those guys actually played in the ball game yesterday. Obviously, Dennis Gates tightening the rotation just a little bit. I think the thing with Carolero is he's seemed hesitant to shoot the ball, number one. And number two, I'm just not really sure who he's going to guard at the SEC level. I think those are the two big questions for him right now. But at the very least, I think Dennis Gates is very much explicitly said that if you're going to hesitate, if you're open from downtown and you're going to hesitate, he's not going to really put up with that. So I think maybe Martin is having a little bit, he's still trying to find himself a little bit and how he fits within this Missouri offense. I also think Nick Honor is still finding the balance a little bit right now. Fortunately, by the way, after the game, Dennis Gates said that Nick Honor avoided a serious injury in the ball game last night. Could have returned to the floor if they needed him. Obviously, the Tigers didn't so much against SIU Edwardsville. But, I think right now Gates has been encouraging Nick Honor to shoot the ball more. It's a little bit against his instincts, I think, as a pass-first point guard. But, again, I just think early part of the season here, we're still in a little bit of experimentation mode, and everybody's finding the balance, Nick Honor included. And finally, I think you saw Caleb Grill knock down a couple three-pointers tonight. I couldn't be less worried about his shot. That's just about the last thing that I'm worried about. I know it was a slow start to see for him, but you know what? Not worried about Grill whatsoever. And coming up, more observations from last night's basketball game, including an improved Missouri defense, and also why I really hate the James Harden trade for Kobe Brown. I'll explain why coming up. But first, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates on the market. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. With simple tools like screening questions, they make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, Southern Illinois, Edwardsville almost literally couldn't make a shot in the second half of yesterday's ball game. And I think the defense really has looked quite a bit better so far for Missouri than it did last season. I think that's probably lost a little bit in the disappointing performance against Memphis, though it was really the offense that was the disappointing element of that game. Actually, to hold Memphis to, 60 points, there's nothing to really complain about there whatsoever. And part of the Missouri defense that was suffocating in the second half yesterday was true freshman Jordan Butler, and I think he looked pretty good as a rim protector and certainly isn't afraid to shoot a three-pointer whatsoever. So I think, maybe Jesus Carolero can take some notes from Butler in terms of his willingness to gun one up there from downtown. Though it would be nice to see one go in at some point, no doubt about that. But I will say it was nice to hear that Javon Pickett was back at Mizzou Arena last night. I noticed a Pickett up on the scoreboard last night, made me think of Javon, but it wasn't until after the game I realized, oh wait, that was Javon's brother playing for SIU Edwardsville, and Javon was actually in the building to take in the ball game. So, hey, I'll always have a spot for Javon Pickett. Good to hear that he was back in Columbia for just a little bit. But you know what? Something I didn't like to hear recently, when Kobe Brown was first taken by the Los Angeles Clippers this past offseason in the NBA draft, obviously for him to go first round, I was thrilled for him no matter what team he went to. but I actually kind of liked the fit simply because I thought, well, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two great players who have missed a lot of time over the last few seasons, a couple of guys who practically invented the term, especially in Kawhi Leonard's case, the term load management. In other words, I'm going to sit out this game and, hey, how about you young guys have a crack at it? Well, I figured Kobe Brown was going to be one of those guys who got the crack at it, got maybe 25, 30 minutes on occasion. But now with the Clippers, after getting off to a good start, well, what did they do? They wanted to ruin it all by trading for James Harden, who is quite honestly about as radioactive as any non-nuclear material at this point, from what I can tell. I mean, honestly, James Harden, obviously a tremendous basketball player, one of the 75 greatest of all time, a former MVP, all the superlatives. He's great. At the same time, at this point in his career, do I really want a guy who's been able to successfully quit on 3 different franchises in the past 4 or 5 years? Is this the guy I want to help shepherd this team to possibly actually get to the heights it wanted to be? And just from Kobe Brown's perspective, most importantly, not only is this jamming up a lot of potential minutes for Kobe Brown, another wing added to this wing-heavy team, of which Kobe is essentially going to be a wing in the NBA for all intents and purposes, I would say. Well, James Harden, not exactly the type of veteran leadership and example you want to show to Kobe Brown. So I just hope that he doesn't get caught up in what is, to me, looking like a pretty toxic situation here in Los Angeles. But hey, hopefully this hasn't been a toxic listen for those of you. Seriously, thank you as always for making this your first listen every day. And thanks for telling a friend that Locked On Mizzou is free and available wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. So until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.